Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this evening's Warrant Committee meeting. We have a number of items to go through. We may modify our agenda a little bit just to accommodate the schedules of some of our participants. Erin, would you please take the roll?
Yes, so far we have John, Kathy, Stephen, Lorraine, Dave, Kristen, Muhammad, George, and myself. Did I
Very
miss
good.
anybody? I don't think so.
No, I think we're good.
Oh, okay.
Okay. I also know that Kristen is having some difficulty linking in. I just got an email from her.
Oh, I got in. I just sent, I
Oh, you
think
did?
the one, yeah, Erin, that you emailed out, it was not letting me in. So I just sent it out to all the members if they were having the same issues as well.
Oh, interesting. I used the thing that the agenda that Lynn had sent me. Sorry about
Yeah,
that.
Oh, no, that's okay.
Agenda did work, and that's fine. So as long as everybody's here and we're okay, then we can continue. We have no meeting minutes to go through tonight, but we are about to embark on the budget for fiscal year 23, and I'm happy that we have Mike Dennehy. And is Karen with you, Mike?
She is, Mr. Chair.
Terrific. So if you want to give us the 30,000 foot overview of the fiscal 23 budget, we can start to kick that off before we try to conclude the special town meeting business.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Mike Dennehy. I'm your town administrator. I am joined this evening by our wonderful finance director, Karen Praval. Karen joined the team last year midstream. An unbelievable talent. And you'll see her work in action. So a lot of work has been done behind the curtain to this point, understanding that my board, other elected boards, the planning board, and this committee has been entrenched in the special town meeting, which may be held on February 28th and may be postponed until March 14th, due to some legislative issues or executive orders from the governor. And that's to be discussed, but understanding that there's some very wordy and important planning board articles in front of the select board and this committee, and going forward to town meeting. Time hasn't been great to present this stuff to you. So what Karen has been doing, and I'll turn it over to Karen, she can talk about her process and procedure. Karen is not reinventing the wheel, but she is adding a couple of steps in the process this year to our budget. Again, our revenue numbers, unfortunately, we're supposed to be live in person. Karen and myself have been working on some numbers with some department heads. We're trying to forecast our revenue for things like solid waste and our inspectional services, which is through the roofs these days. So that process is underway. The Board of Assessors and Chief Appraiser Bob Bushway are finalizing the tax levy information. We're waiting for free cash for FY 21 to be verified through the Department of Revenue. And on Friday, unfortunately remotely, as the Mass Municipal Association annual conference has been canceled or suspended in person and will move remotely, we should hear from the governor, who will announce his last of 8 annual unrestricted general government aid and Chapter 70 numbers for our community, which many of the members on this committee know are so important to our town because we're so revenue restricted. So Karen, do you want to just touch upon the process so far? And I will say we sat with 6 department heads today to refine their numbers and refine their narrative. It's Karen's intention to get all of this information into the hands of each member of the warrant committee, and then understanding that each of you will be on a subcommittee or two. You'll have the ability to drill down further into that. So what you'll receive generally as a part of the town side budgets is what you will see in the warrant, and then as a subcommittee member, you'll be able to drill down and look deeper into those numbers. So Karen, is that a good description of where we are? And We do apologize. We understand that it's January 18th and this stuff is usually in front of the warrant committee, about a month prior, but this is where we are. Again, trying to refine some revenue numbers, but Karen and myself are in the process of really coming down to our expenditure numbers.
That's accurate. Thank you. Thank you for letting me have the opportunity to come and speak in front of your committee. About a month ago, might have been 3 weeks ago, I explained the budget calendar. We're moving forward. We've met every single one of the deadlines that we set out for that calendar. We received all of the budgets back from the department heads last Monday. And so I'm compiling that. As Mike was saying, we met with 6 departments this morning, and these meetings are set up so that we can really understand what services they need, what money they need, different ways that we can provide them options of saving if there's different resources that they can tap into. We're having a meeting to discuss that. So this week, we'll be meeting with every department head, finalizing the numbers. So Friday, I should be able to, I'd say on Monday, because I like to review it before I send it to the warrant committee. But I should have all the numbers from all the departments. You'll receive a summary. The summary sheet will show the FY22 approved budget through town meeting. It will also show the FY23 request and any addition to any variance from what was requested and approved in the previous year. We also have a supplemental request form. So if you're wondering why a budget has gone up, there'll be sufficient backup documentation explaining why budgets are looking for additional money. Most of the supplemental requests are for funds that are not contractual. The FY23 budget is going to include level funded and anything that we're obligated through contracts to pay. So sometimes electricity rates go up. Sometimes contracts in terms of licensing fees may increase every year, but we've included that in the budget. I would like to allow the warrant committee, there have been requests in the past to be able to sit down with departments. Even though you're looking at the budgets on paper, sometimes it's a different story when you hear from the department heads and you hear from, you can hear from them because they're working with the residents. And I saw that today when we were meeting with the Council on Aging. You see increases, you see what the wants are, but to really have an understanding and hear from the department head of what they're responding to in terms of what residents' requests are, I think it's really important. So I'm hoping that this board, the process went really smoothly today. This is the first time doing the remote meetings. So we're able to set up a link, and hopefully we can do that with your committee so that if you have questions, you want to hear from the departments, after being able to review the budget, you'll be able to look at the supplementals. As Mike was saying, you can drill down and see the more detailed levels. Town meeting votes just expenditures and salaries, but you'll be able to see the number of staff that they have in the department, what their salary rates are, longevity, all the different categories that make up that actual final number. So I think we're in a pretty good start right now in terms of allowing time for people to review, ask questions. And then when we get the revenue figures in, as Mike was saying, the DOR certifies our free cash, I'll be able to provide, more information in terms of what our revenue is, because revenue dictates what the budget's, what we can actually spend. So I'll be working with Mike on that today, looking at local receipts. We met over the summer, looking at trends with different department heads that bring in revenue. So it's been a very collaborative effort. So we're coming down to I wouldn't say the end, but the start to moving forward with our budget that we hope to submit, by May to town meeting.
Aaron, customarily, the warrant committee will meet with the largest component budget, and we would have begun that certainly by now. Understand there have been other things that have been going on. We almost always talk to the school department first, and then public safety, DPW, cemetery, Parks and Rec. the largest components of the budget will come in and speak to us generally, but the majority of the work is done by the subcommittees. I mean, we want to hear the
Okay.
overview of us talking, but the subcommittees will meet with them and actually do the kind of knit work that has to be done in those, because otherwise we'd be having warrant committee meetings that went on for 6 hours, and I'm too old for that. So happen anymore because I fall asleep at a certain hour. So what we ordinarily do is have this overview from you and Mike, and we're grateful that you've come. And questions that the members of the warrant committee want to pose, now is the time. I guess my first question is going to be, when will we see the departmental breakdowns that we can?
I'll have those available next week. So I'll be able to send everyone an email. You'll see it at a summary level, and then I'll have folders where you can see all the backup information. There are some budgets that we don't have the projections yet, so we're still working. In terms of benefits, retirement, we have the Blue Hills, tech. We're still waiting on numbers, but the majority of the numbers from the departments, you'll have all of those by next week.
Do you think we can begin the process of having the school budget distributed and schedule the superintendent and the chair of the school committee to come in within the next couple of weeks? Because that's the biggest nut. That and public safety and DPW, of course, the Council on Aging and Parks and Recs, cemetery to some extent also. But we'd like to get those beginning as quickly as possible, because they're the ones that take the most time.
Definitely.
Mr. Chair. Go ahead, Karen.
I just wanted to mention that I have been working with Amy, and so as they put their budgets together, we will, be having meetings to just go over where we are, what we're looking at providing, consistent information between the school department and the town.
Right.
Mr. Chair, if I might add, as Member Cassis and Member D know, the Capital Improvement Committee is also working through its process. It's heard from most of the department heads. We have Bob Patterson from IT at the schools coming in on Thursday for the 5th meeting. But as this group knows, and as many of you know, we are seeing some supply chain issues. We are seeing some high pricing. For those of you that have been following our, for lack of better terms, our drama with the animal shelter, the bids that we received were utterly shocking. $1,000 a square foot, which, in this day and age is probably, I don't want to speak on behalf of Bill Ritchie, who's our subject matter expert, but probably more than 2x what we were expecting. So perfect example, the police chief was in today and talking about a couple of years ago, he received $128,000 a year to replace some cruisers. 2 years ago, that would get him 4 cruisers. Last year, out of an abundance of caution and in order to balance the budget, we trimmed that number to $88,000, right? That $88,000 today might get him 2 cruisers. So we're seeing these type of issues come along. The capital improvement group is also going to hear from our town treasurer about the level of debt service. We're talking about maybe putting stuff in this year's warrant for capital improvement, knowing that there's some supply chain issues and it may take 2 years for us to get these products. So just know that we're working through all of this stuff, and the economy and inflation is starting to rear its head when it comes to some of these budget numbers, and we're not really getting the bang for the buck that we used to in 2-3 years ago.
Yeah,
it's very
appreciate knowing that. I guess one question that I would also put to you both is being able to make the invitations to the school department to come in. What do you think is reasonable and realistic?
It's my understanding that the school committee finance subcommittee met last week. I think that was to ratify their FY23 budget. We saw a glimpse of it one morning at our joint meeting. So the finance committee for the select board and the finance committee for the school committee have been working along some ARPA issues. And I want to thank Karen for all her work on ARPA and CARES and FEMA and all the stuff that's going on with the grant application. So as a part of that process, we did see a glimpse into their FY23 budget, but it's my understanding that they were going to take a formal vote on that. So we can foster that invitation, but I think they're ready to come to this committee.
That's great, because as I say, once we get through the special town meeting warrant, we've got to roll up our sleeves and do that in order to be prepared for the annual and to make both appropriate discernment and analysis to the budget, which is of everybody's in everybody's interest.
Mr. Chair, if I might, just one small note that also goes hand in hand. Thankfully, the Warrant Committee, this committee, put together after hearing from town meeting and the onset of COVID in June of 2020 at our annual town meeting, that we present and support an assistant health director for the overburdened and understaffed health department in our community. It took almost a year and a half to find an employee for that. So we are having some concern with hiring. Obviously, RNs are at a premium, and anybody in the health field. So just know that there is some lag time with respect to some of the hirings in town as well. But we're doing the best we can.
Good. Questions by the membership for Karen and Mike, please.
You want me to go? I see Mr. Pace has his hand up.
Scott Johnson has a question, Mr. Chair.
I'm having trouble actually. Oh, here we go.
Yeah.
Let's see.
George, this is me.
Go ahead, Scott. Hit it.
Yeah, Mr. Dennehy, I know you probably have thought about this question. In my company, we have put a moratorium on, and we find it's probably less expensive to do repairs or whatever, where supply chain related purchases are in the private sector. That seems to be what a lot of us are doing. We're trying to hold back because we know eventually this should work itself out, and some of these expenses like automobiles and things like that, police cruisers, I don't know whether these things are on their last legs and limping, or have you guys entertained the idea of holding back for a year or so on purchases like that, just because you're going to pay a premium? Like, the cost of plywood a year ago was astronomical, and it's come down 50% in the last year from where it was when it peaked. So I think there's definitely inflation. I'm not disputing that, but I think that we're with certain supply things where the semiconductors are involved and things like that. It's outrageous. I don't know if you guys have discussed the possibility of pushing that off.
That is a great question, and Karen, finance director, asked Chief King that same question this morning about cruisers. They don't need them right now. That doesn't mean tomorrow one of them won't get in an accident, God forbid. But for this time, we don't. So that's something that we might look at. If you take a look at the city of Quincy had two large bids that were going out recently. Their animal shelter, they put the brakes on it, right? They didn't put that animal shelter out to bid. They put their police station out to bid. What was estimated at $120 million 2 months ago came in at $150 million. So I know the diligent group at the Fire Station Building Committee and others are putting together an RFP to go out for that. But that's something that we have and will talk about, knowing that, to your point, that things are starting to free up. I think those of you that saw that large container ship in Boston yesterday, where the largest container in Boston ever in the Boston Harbor came through. So it seems like things are tightening up. But that's a very good question and something that was presented to Chief King this morning from Karen.
Yeah, I put a building project. I had a large building project I was getting ready to do, and I put it on hold for 2 years now at this point, and the prices are starting to break. There is some labor loosening up very slightly. It's still premature to do it, but I mean, if there's any way we can hold off, I agree with you. I think you guys are Karen and you are doing the right thing by asking those hard questions of all those departments.
Yeah, I will say though, some of the stuff that we've been working through with ARPA, knowing that ARPA has a sunset date on the funding source, we tried to get ahead of that early. We were one of the first communities to file an application with Norfolk County grant application for that. We funded a shovel. So if we're shovel ready, we're ready to go. We had a shovel ready water main project that we gave $1 million of ARPA money to. Stuff like that where the bids have already gone out. They do have a bid out for one of the town meeting articles, the sewer betterment article. Who knows where those bids are going to come in next month, right before town meeting. So point well taken.
Thanks. Great job.
Oh, Henny, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for Mr. Dennehy and Ms. Faval for your presentations. We do certainly appreciate it. And following up on my dear friend Scott Johnson's question, also thinking about cost of living, right? One of the things we always get in a pickle about is, the union costs and things and, increases. And I just want to know if you're expecting to see any rising salary costs, any cost due to, any cost of living, cost of labor issues, and if there's a budget need to consider some of those going up as well.
Great question, O'Henny. So on the town side, I am the point person for negotiations for 7 unions. All 7 union contracts will be expiring on June 30th. Not surprisingly, 3 of the unions have already reached out about discussing negotiations. I would assume it's probably because it's probably going to take a while, not knowing what's going on with the economy, with the Omicron variant, and who knows what comes next. But yeah, there are ongoing discussions. In years like this, when we don't have contracts that will follow through the following fiscal year, we do put a 2% set aside in a fund. So the numbers you see coming through the budgets won't include that. We have a separate budget article for set aside for union negotiations. So 2% is what we're setting aside this year.
Other questions? Okay, I think that will do it for now.
Mr. Chair, if I
Oh, go-
can, if I can real quick, sorry, it's Erin. I just wanted to say I'm really happy that the health department got that assistant position filled finally. It's kind of, I almost feel like we could have seen this coming with it taking so long, because if I recall correctly, the school had a really hard time filling 3 of their positions and actually weren't able to do that because it's just a really hard time to be hiring. So I'm thrilled that she was able to get that done. And it has the help now because wow, has she been working the last 2 years? So great.
No, I appreciate that, and she certainly does, and that whole group. Then yeoman's work since the onset. It's going on. We're just shy of 2 years now since the outbreak. What you will see, and Karen touched upon it earlier, is our Council on Aging. You see people in their. We talked to the director today. You see people in their 60s. Which years ago was a retirement age. Now people are working well past that. Some of them have cashed in and they're using the Council on Aging more frequently. And I think the median average or average age over at the Council on Aging is lower than it used to be. And she's seeing an influx of younger seniors and entering that building. So the makeup of that building and some of the classes that they're constructing in order to use that balance over there. It is probably the most popular place in town, including the library and other places like that where people spend a lot of time. But we're seeing a different group of people. We are seeing that same reliable group showing up, but we are seeing a different group show up, a younger group at the Council on Aging to use that. And the director is going to judge her budget this year to work around some of that stuff. So you may see something from the Council on Aging that you didn't see before. The state legislature just supported a $64,000 ARPA funding from their funds for the Council on Aging to increase classes and provide more support over there. So it's a changing dynamic. It's the same square footage over there at 10 Walnut Street, but there's a lot going on, and there's a lot of moving parts that, quite honestly, weren't there before COVID, and sadly, obviously, weren't there during COVID. So, but it's quite an energetic place these days.
This is encouraging for those of us who are approaching an age where we might take advantage of it. We'll look forward to the classes that might include rock throwing. So hope's eternal for the rest of us.
Mr. Chair,
Karen, please.
I had one other update.
Go ahead.
The warrant that we'll be using in town meeting in May, we've automated that process. And so when Lynn comes back from vacation, we'll be working with ClearGov and providing training classes. They're all remote. They have pretty easy to follow videos that each committee and board will be able to enter their section of the warrant, whatever article they are online. Anyone on the committee that wants to have read-only access, if you want to look at the warrant and just see the progress of where we are, I'll be able to update the budgets, especially with the actuals, and some of the charts that are for past data. I'll be to implement those. So I just want to let the committee know that that's going to be coming up next week. And I'll be working with Lynn to make sure that everyone in the committee that has access or needs access to updating a particular article, reviewing it, has enough time to receive training, and that you understand that process of how that will work.
That's great. I think that will make a big difference in our ability to construct the warrant, just technically and mechanically. I think that will help a lot.
Mr.
Okay.
Chair, if I could add one last comment before closing. Any town department head or Karen or myself, any meeting that you need us to going forward, we're here twice a week, 3 times a week, whatever you need. But I think we can confidently kick this stuff off next week. Name the department head and we'll have them here with Karen, myself, or by themselves, or however you want it.
Well, I'll preempt that and say have the school department ready to big help. And I know the school subcommittee, which has already been named, will be interested to start that process. I mean, we always love hearing what's going on anyway, and the presentation has just been really comprehensive and gets better and better every year. So we're ready to go. Terrific. Thank you all.
Thank you for your time, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you for all you
Thank
do.
you.
Thank you for all you do.
Oh, goodness. All right.
Good night.
Night, everybody. Now, next on our agenda is the accessory dwelling unit article. We have a number of people who have asked to speak on the subject. Denny Swenson has joined us. If you are able to do so, Denny is the chair of the planning board. Can you give us the status of the draft that we've seen? It was circulated today. Because there are several things that are happening, but if you can give us just a 2-minute summary of the most developments and what we have to look forward to with respect to this particular article.
Okay, so the planning board had town council into our planning board meeting last week. He advised us that we had to have a public hearing to address scope and posting issues. Our public hearing on the accessory dwelling unit article has to be posted for 2 weeks and is now scheduled for February 8th. Also last week, we received a citizen article amending the temporary apartment bylaw. So we will be having a public hearing on that in March, early March, date to be announced. And I did receive note that the select board has slated that article for the May warrant. So, and I did, I took your question seriously last time I was in. You asked for the areas of interest to the public. So if it's at all helpful to you, I could tell you I looked at 30 letters that came in from the citizens on this article. I'd be happy to tell you some of the trends that sort of jumped out, or I'd be happy to do it later if you'd like.
Oh, yeah, I think we're all interested in this.
Okay, so on the planning board page, you can click on zoning articles and you'll find a link to accessory dwelling unit comments. As of Friday, I counted 30 emails that were sent to the planning board. 26 letters were challenging aspects of the accessory dwelling unit article. 4 letters were supporting aspects of the accessory dwelling unit article. So the trends that sort of jumped out at me when I went through the letters, I sort of kept a chart, and 25 letters stated that they want special permit as opposed to as of right. 3 letters stated the opposite. 15 letters said basically that they like the temporary apartment bylaw that we already have in place, and or they want to keep it to family members like we do in the temporary apartment bylaw article already in place. And then 2 letters stated the opposite. Other topics that sort of jumped out were 9 letters complained about process. People wanted more time, more transparency. You know, some expressed shock, some said they felt unheard in the process. 7 letters stated concerns about enforcement. 8 letters stated concerns over impact on town services and requested further study in that area. Other concerns noted, people were afraid of the cap, you know, that cap of 10 units per year. People were afraid of that cap getting lifted. And they were also, there was some repeated mention of the concern of potential impact or need to create more affordable units to get out from under the aggressive threat of 40B developers. And many of the letters didn't include addresses, but of the 15 that did, it was 15 different streets from across the town. So.
It sounds like you've been getting a fair bit of input. Has the process now, as it stands now, if we do have the town meeting on the 28th of February, and you have your hearing on February 8th, which could modify this article further, then what we vote on could be nullified, moved, withdrawn. I mean, pick an adjective, pick a verb. So there's still, there's a lot of moving parts here. Okay, right, okay, that helps us to some extent, because I think the sense that I have been gathering of the Warrant Committee is that, you know, we reflect a lot of what goes on in the town. We all get input from town residents and I think that we are a microcosm of what you have already experienced, because I think, and when you've sat a couple of our meetings, you've heard many of the same perspectives, same points of view voiced. And after this conversation today and hearing the inputs from other evening, you know, I can't project where we're going to come out, but I dare say it will be. I doubt it'll be conclusive, very honestly. So I'm not trying to be an impediment to the process at all. And I appreciate that this is a very complicated issue that is a fair bit of concern, is a huge bit of concern. And there, you know, we want to divorce emotion from it as much as possible. That's not necessarily easy. And I think you know that too. And I think the committee knows that. So to be as dispassionate and objective as we can, the objective for us right now. So if anybody has any questions for the chair of the planning board, now's the time. Otherwise, we can do some of the other speakers. Denny, thank you very much for spending time with us.
Well, thank you for having me. And
Okay,
thank you for all you and your members do. It's a lot of work.
Oh my goodness, you put in I don't even want to calculate. All right, 3 questions that I see so far, and I will do it in order. Scott, please go ahead.
Good evening, Denny. I have a question for you, and it's pretty quick. Is the amendment that's been presented, is that the one drawn up by Alex Whiteside?
So for the temporary apartment bylaw, I do think that Alex Whiteside had a hand in that. I notice it's been signed by, I think, 10 or 15 citizens, and Alex is one of them. The citizens article, the temporary apartment bylaw.
Okay, thank you. I just was curious.
Sure.
That's separate. The citizens petition is separate from the accessory dwelling unit that we are looking at tonight. The citizens petition is something I hope many of us have already read, if not all of us, but that's for the annual meeting in May. I mean, we can consider that as we have a discussion, as we know that pending and will likely be in the warrant for the, but we're not sure. But as I say, what we're looking at tonight is accessory dwelling unit, which has been revised and which will be considered in the public hearing. What I can say to you, Scott, is that Alex did provide a number of responses and input to the accessory dwelling, which then wrong, you did consider and incorporate to some extent.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Oh, Henny, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ms. Swenson, for coming again, and we appreciate your hard labor on this. I just want to understand to make sure I fully understand what's happening. And I have a comment, and I'd love your understanding. So are we saying that we are going to yet again kick this down the road to another town meeting to this is to May now, right? It looks like the earliest we would be able to have this town meeting would be May, and that I'm just trying to understand what happens with our vote. Maybe Mr. Chair or some of the other people understand the process better. Are we going to discuss if we vote? Does our vote matter now? Or are we going to just kick the can? So that's my first question. Can someone just help me understand
that question in terms of process? We can vote on it with and we move the date of the special town meeting. These are all open questions. We can choose to not vote on it tonight. I don't know that that's the right thing, or we can choose to vote on what we have in front of us, and it can either be we recommend it, we don't recommend it, or we send it back to the planning board for further study. I will just use this comment. We've considered this several times, and it's been brought back by the planning board or the select board on at least 2 occasions. I have been hearing from many people around town that if we are going to change this, we have to deliberate very, very, very specifically and very carefully. I use the adage that my sainted father once used. Marry in haste, repent in leisure. Kicking it down the road a little more doesn't bother me one itsy little bit. I just want to make sure we're not going to put something in place that is going to blow things apart because it's either poorly drafted, not supported universally, or satisfying some agenda that's not yet clear. So I think we have to be careful how we phrase these things. I just want to be sure that we as a committee understand what we're doing, what's around us, and extremely deliberate about the questions that we ask, how we make our recommendations, and know that this has implications for the town for many, many years. And last thing I think any of us wants is to open a Pandora's box. So,
Mr. Chair, could I follow on that? Because my question is, and Ms. Swenson, I would say this, to receive 15 or 20 or 30 letters, I don't know how many, that specifically outline their concerns about the phrase "as a right," to me hardly suggests a cross-section of the population. That's clearly agenda driven. So I want to make sure that as we present this data, because I am a big fan of recognizing when we are just stalled in NIMBYism and scared of change, which we all know in this town is a big issue. And so I want to make sure the data you presented, that everyone understands that I didn't understand that phrase until I sat in this warrant committee. So let's not suggest that these are just random letters from people in town. This is clearly people who are advocating around this issue and are making a concerted effort to push this down the can. I think it's fair to not present this data as some, Gallup certified poll from Quinnipiac. So I think that's important to understand. Thank you.
Very astute observation. I think we should consider that. We can, as our discussion continues, we can put that in context. Kristen, you have the floor.
Hi, Jenny. I just wanted to say I listened to the planning board earlier today and just wanted to thank you and the members just for deliberating, so thoughtfully. It was interesting to listen to. And I know you guys have clearly spent a lot of time on this. So just wanted to thank you guys all for them.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Steve, you have the floor.
Yeah, I just have a quick question, clarification of the document I read today from legal. There's two sections in there. One section says the apartment or the ADU to be smaller than the smaller of both 900 feet or half the floor area of the house. And then there's another section, E3, says it's 900 feet or 1/3 of the floor area. So it doesn't give me a lot of feeling that this is well vetted out document. I'm not a lawyer, but
Yeah.
Oh,
And
okay.
have
That's,
section
That's a
B
good
and section E3.
okay, section E3. Okay, well, I will bring that back to the board. Section E3. Thank you.
that, yeah, for bringing forward, Steve. There are a couple of items of that nature, and maybe it was just a question of proofing, but this is where when you amend the bylaw that is as detailed and complicated as this one, the devil's in the details.
Yep.
Have the floor.
I'm good, thank you.
David.
Sorry.
Thank you for that feedback. That's an excellent catch, and that's a detail issue that I will bring back to them.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah. Dave, you have the floor if you want it. Oh, I guess not.
Thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Chair. Yep, this is Dave Humphreys. Again, thank you to the planning board for this. It has been a deliberative process. The town deserves that. With regards to the process, it's important. With regards to whether we on the warrant committee would deliberate and make a vote on a amendment to the bylaws that is still pending a final vote before the planning board, which is not a mere formality. It's a formal vote with notice to the townspeople. I'm sure that there will be comment. I don't think the time is right for us to have that deliberation and vote now, for some of the same reasons why the planning board has to have a rehearing. You know, we're not subject to a notice requirement that would prohibit us from having it. We've put it on our agenda. However, I think that for us to vote prior to a formal vote by the planning board would be not proper, though not illegal. I'd like to say that. Thank you.
I appreciate. Are there any other members of the warrant committee who have input? Otherwise, we have a couple of individuals from town have asked to speak to us. And if not, we have Bob Sweeney, who has asked to us. Bob, are you there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Can hear you. You have 7 minutes, and I'm going to time you.
It was Tim Kernan who requested to speak, and I'd be happy to follow Tim or answer any questions.
Okay, you decide between the two of you who would like to speak. It's perfectly fine if you both do.
Tim and I have had conversation, and he was to lead off.
Okay, Tim, the floor, and
I'm here and ready to go if you can hear me.
yeah, we can hear you. Speak up a little trouble, but
great.
go ahead.
Thank you. Again, this is Tim Kernan. I am president of the Brush Hill Area Neighborhood Association and a co-founder of the Milton Neighborhood Coalition. The coalition is a group of neighborhood associations across Milton who just meet to discuss common issues and common concerns amongst us. Over the course of this weekend, we polled our membership, which consists of the heads of the neighborhood associations, and endorse the following statement, and I will keep it as brief as possible. We believe that the accessory dwelling unit article should be sent back for further study. And we'd also like to support the citizens amendment to improve the temporary apartment bylaw. That's our statement, and it's been signed by 14 neighborhood associations: Hillside Neighborhood Association, Brush Hill Neighborhood Association, Blue Hill, Indian Cliffs, Milton Hill Neighborhood, East Milton, Turner's Pond, Tucker, Scotts Woods, Forbes Hill, Harlan Street, Milton Village, Cushing Road, and the Town Center Neighborhood Association. That's it. Thank you very much. I appreciate your giving me a few minutes to speak.
No, we're grateful that you came to us, and we're also very interested to hear of that the petition that has been sent around. Does Bob Sweeney have anything to add?
Yes, well, earlier today, I sent to the chairs of the planning board, the warrant committee, and the select board information that we're discussing right now. And I think that every select board member, planning board member, and warrant committee member should give it a read. Basically, I have followed the planning board's ADU issues now for a considerable period of time. And the planning board has, each of its individual members have put in good effort representing their point of view. I just think the chairperson, Denise Swenson, as Denny's done a great job in this. I feel I've got a pretty good handle on it, but I don't think that it's ready to go to town meeting. And I say that because, first of all, we're talking about an ADU article that shuts out neighbors. I don't think that's democracy. Neighbors have a right to know what's going on in their neighborhood. And this current proposal seems to say no neighbors, no Board of Appeals, no provisions for enforcement, no provisions for termination, first come, first serve. It's like rentals. I don't think we should be in that business. If you look at the history of this town, you can see that we've been very desirable, an attractive community. So the first question is, do we want to keep it that way? And I think it's an obvious answer. Yes, we do. When you start to deal with an ADU, you're getting into a situation that, even though most people aren't aware of it, you're getting into a dangerous area. And the dangerous area that you're getting into is you're moving towards tinkering with the character of this town, what has attracted people to this town. And the fact is that people historically and now move into Milton. Part of the reason that they move in, it's attractive because it's less dense than other communities. And the current ADU, you're moving in the other direction. You're moving in a dense direction. You're going to put more cars in your street. You're going to take away the green grass, because historically, Milton is considered sort of like a residential town, single family homes and green lawns and trees on your streets. And that is certainly something that we want to continue to. We want our communities to stay attractive. So if you move towards something that's dense, there's potential. It could be a potentially harmful game changer. And you look at the current situation. See, I don't even understand why we're talking about this, because the current situation, one thing I think of is the schools. And what's the current situation of the schools? It's been overcrowded now for a number of years. That's the current situation. What are we doing about it? Well, on the agendas of the selectmen tomorrow night, they're going to be talking about a land swap. So they realize that there's a need there. But potentially these in-law apartments potentially could exasperate the situation in the schools that we're trying to deal for. I don't think that we should get into a situation where we're talking about overcrowded schools. We're talking about fire staffing, police staffing. We need to, if we're going to make changes that potentially affect the character of this town, then we need to be sure that every I and every T is dotted in what we're doing. And I can tell you firsthand that the ADU proposal that was accepted by a 3-2 vote of the planning board is not ready. It's flawed. And I'm suggesting that the best action for the town to take is to send it back for further study. You got to have those I's dotted and the T's crossed. But one good thing I feel, I'm really feeling good right now about the potential positive effect of the citizens article. Because to me, that is potentially fixing the current situation, which would be in the best interest of the town. So where I'm coming from, based on my government experience, which includes service on town meeting, select board, school committee, my strong suggestion is send it back for further study. We're not ready yet. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Erin, you have your hand up first.
Yeah. Thanks, Mr. Chair. Can one of you, Tim or Bob, send the warrant committee that letter that was signed? Because we're going to need it for our notes and our documents. I got my secretary hat on right now.
Yep.
And then my question is this. How does one find out about these neighborhood associations? Because I have lived in Milton for quite some time, and maybe my neighborhood doesn't have one. So is there a way for folks to actually find out what neighborhood they would be associated with?
The town clerk has information about neighborhoods associations, and there are a number of them. I am active in the neighborhood association where I live, and then I'm also active in the neighborhood coalition with Tim Kernan and others. And the reason that, in addition to our own particular neighborhoods, the reason why we formed a neighborhood coalition, it was the realization on our parts that neighborhoods need to work together for the common good when issues common to all of the town arise, such as a year or so ago when there was a controversy over a bylaw condo. So the neighborhood coalition is sort of there to try to be an instrument to promote the common good of the town.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I would have liked to have talked to my neighborhood association and let them know how I was feeling about this. So I really appreciate you telling me that the town clerk has all this information. I had no idea.
That's something we tried to set up years ago when a lot of the neighborhood associations began to get formed. We tried to make the clerk's office a point position for developers or people on the planning board or people on any boards throughout town to be able to find out which neighborhood associations existed and who the contacts were.
Okay. Let's see. I have 3 more hands up. I have Carol, whom I do not. Carol, identify yourself.
Yeah, hi, I'm Carol Stocker at 291 Hillside Street. And I said to my husband a minute ago, Robert, you've got to get my last name up there. So if I at a meeting, it just doesn't say Carol. And he said to me, I'll try, honey. But for now, I'm just Carol Stocker, 291 Hillside Street. I am one of the people who signed a citizen's petition for another version of giving relief to people who want to have apartments in their homes for family members. And and so there's basically two.
I muted her, Mr. Chair, so you can go.
Carol, you have to stop for a second. You did not request to speak to this evening. Okay, you technically are not on the agenda, and it's difficult for me to recognize you in for that reason. We are not a town meeting. We are not an open meeting in that sense. You must apply to speak to us. So I apologize, but I have to follow the format that we have in place. I will, as a courtesy, since you're here, give you 2 minutes. So whatever you have to say, keep it to 2 minutes and we're fine. So please unmute her.
She has to unmute herself, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Well,
Carol,
I apologize to you. I'm sorry, I didn't know the procedure.
that's
Quickly,
okay.
I'm
You're
sorry.
here. Gotta say, please, we're interested to hear what you have.
Well, thank you. I'm just a citizen, and I wanted to say that there's two different proposals, and one of them is going to be perhaps if you put it on the warrant on the meeting in May, of the town meeting in May, and I have and then the other one is for the earlier town meeting, and that is the ADU proposal that was narrowly passed by the planning board. And as a citizen, I think it would make sense if they both were before the town meeting in May, so that they could be discussed. What's the point of passing one when there is an alternative, which is for families that want housing in their houses, units, that they're both similar proposals and they should be discussed at the same meeting, and that should be the May meeting. And I want to go a step further and say that given the financial hardships of the town and of COVID and the dangers of COVID, I'm wondering why we're having two meetings, as it doesn't seem to me that there is anything on the agenda that needs to be discussed and passed in a special town meeting in the middle of a COVID epidemic, when it's very hard for people to pay attention.
Yeah.
We've got other things on our minds. Can't
Very
we just have a May meeting?
I'm actually grateful that you made a couple of those points. So I'm very happy that you joined our meeting, because I have heard those from a couple of other people as well.
Thank you.
So thank you for joining us. I'm grateful for your time. Scott, you have the floor.
Yeah, couple of things. First of all, Aaron, the neighborhood associations are random, and not every neighborhood has one. So maybe the reason you're not in a neighborhood association, your neighborhood may not have one. I don't know. But I think it's kind of useful to know that the town clerk does have a listing of them, because I never knew that before either. Second of all, George, what's the procedure for people that want to speak at the at the warrant committee meeting? How do they get on the agenda?
They are welcome to speak. They have to make the request to the chair as part
you.
To me, basically. And I generally always accommodate. In fact, we always accommodate. But in order to put things on the agenda and have people aware that they're on the agenda, we do this.
Okay. Now, it's funny that Carol said what she said, because she kind of took the words out of my mouth. How would we go about postponing the articles on this special town meeting, which it seems kind of ridiculous in a way, to the May meeting? Can we cancel that meeting and just move it to May? I mean, there's no emergency for anything here, is it? Just a lot of work and money.
Let's back up 2 seconds. When the special first scheduled, there were many more articles than have survived. There were, I think, a total of 8 that were initially discussed. 2 were withdrawn early on, and 2 more were withdrawn when we started the process of reviewing the articles, if you recall. So we ended up actually with 4, including the accessory dwelling unit warrant article. Okay. So with this one, if it is withdrawn or otherwise, postponed, there would be 3, in which case I have heard the same comment from many other people. Our place is not to schedule the town meeting. That's up to the select board, the town administrator. If there is, and the town moderator for that matter as well. So that is not our purview. From a
Mr. Chair,
yes.
just real quick, one of those articles, the one that has to be the liquor license,
Yep.
that has to be introduced to the legislature.
Right.
So if we were to wait until May, they would not have a lot of time for them to debate it before they go on break at the end of July. So, us having it and doing that in February is actually, if we didn't have it, it would set that development project back.
Additionally, the sewer betterment project on Randolph Ave, I was about to say, has to be bonded, in which case that process can't begin unless the town meeting gives them that go ahead. That really should happen as soon as possible so they can break ground and begin the process as quickly as possible for many reasons, not the least of which is the escalating cost associated with inflation and labor and all this other stuff that we're already hearing about. So I understand why some of these articles are kind of pressing and why the special town meeting was called. As I say, it's unfortunately not our place to make many of these decisions, and some of these articles can be discussed and either approved or not approved as the pleasure of the town meeting goes. But if they are approved, then the process can begin in a timely fashion.
Okay. Okay, so so if we either send the ADU back to the committee for further study, or we vote to not recommend it, those are kind of our alternatives to
or to
not
recommend.
having,
Right.
Yeah, not recommend, excuse me. Yeah.
Excuse me.
So either way,
I will, as soon as we finish this conversation, that's going to be the next question I pose to the committee. So let's all the perspectives and points of view on the table and consider, and we can decide what we want to do as a committee, what we think is in the best interest of the town and town meeting, and take it from there.
good. I'm good.
Yeah, so there were a couple of hands up. Mohammed, you had your hand up and took it down, and Dave, you did too. If you have anything that you want to share, please do it. Now's the time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It was just in regard to the association. I just wanted to ask a question, but it sounds like Bob and his cohort have dropped off. So we just have to be careful. So I've been living in Milton for over 12 years and I've never heard of associations also. So I know that that letter was signed by 14 association heads. My question was more around how many associations are there? And are those that signed the letter, do they represent the entire community or just their own views? So we also have to just be careful about, how things are proposed. Is this really representative of the town or just a group of motivated folks that want to assert their own opinions?
That's true. I think that's a worthwhile question to ask. Unfortunately, I don't know how many neighborhood associations there are or who is on them, but the petitions have been signed. There are petitions that have been signed and they represent, there are, a number of people. I can't give you the exact number, but there are more than a few. Do they represent a point of view? Obviously, of course. Otherwise, they wouldn't have signed the petition. But I think it's we consider that. Obviously, it's our job to consider those points of view. But more importantly, ours is to consider the merits of what we have before us right now. Dave, you had your hand up. Do you have something that you want to add, please?
I really don't, Mr. Chair. I was just going to add in the memory care article is important to go forward with too at the town meeting because of the bylaw change that they're waiting on to go forward in that project.
Right. Thank you for bringing that one up. I had that one is unfortunately the other ones came into mind first, but yes, the memory care one is time sensitive as well. So for again, it is not our purview to schedule the town meeting. What we have to do is get the facts and our perspective and our analysis before the town they can make the decision. All of the issues that have been raised, an in-person during COVID, et cetera. I mean, we've heard all these discussion points, and that's unfortunately up to the governor and the legislature to extend the remote possibility, which frankly in the last several meetings has generated a larger attendance than in person has for the past several years. So it's not a bad thing to have these remote meetings.
George, can I make a comment?
Of course, John, please do.
I think we ought to put these forward because we put them all under the May town meeting. It would take forever to get through that meeting. It would take probably 7-8 nights.
We can get through this quickly, and I don't think it will be quick because this one will be a very, very hotly discussed issue. But anyway, the fact is that we do have the special town meeting that is still scheduled. We're obliged to come up with our recommendations. We have 3 of them in hand. This ADU one is the one we're discussing now. So this is the issue now that we have to discuss. Do we want, I want a sense of the committee if we can get it. Do we want to vote on this as we see it now, knowing that it will be modified by the, potentially by the hearing on February 8th at the planning board, knowing that that possibility exists? Or do we say we want to send it back to the planning board as review it now and have them consider it as part of the February 8th hearing? Or do we say this isn't ready, we do not recommend town meeting to approve this? I'm interested to hear what everybody has to say. Oh, Henny, your hand is up first. Please go ahead.
Mr. Chair, thank you very much. I'm still laughing at the fact that you forgot about the memory care article. So that's you know, it's just has, you give us so many moments of humor.
Right.
So many moments of levity, George. We thank you for it. It's so I think this,
hoping somebody would.
Thank you, Dave. David's gonna be the memory guy, you know. We'll count on him. I do appreciate all that's been said. So as one of the folks who's been here for more than one term here, I want to point out that as George said earlier, we have seen this article before. We've talked about it numerous times, and if we are to defer it, based on the discussions we've had, at least based on my thoughts, I read it over, I've seen it. If we defer it based on the will of the town, if we are voting on the merits of the article, I've heard every aspect of it. I've heard every side of it. Nothing has changed other than people want to say more about it, or we want to change it, or they want to take it off, or whatever the case is. Based on them, if we're voting on the merits of the article that is before us, that we have discussed well over gray beard warrant committee discussions, going on a year and a half, however long it's been discussed. I think it's important to note that that's what we're doing. If we are voting to hear the townsfolk and say we stand with them and say it's not ready, and we want to listen to the town, we want to take more process. And as Scott pointed out, as Dave pointed out, as others pointed out, if there is a town vote on this, I guess what happens if we do vote and then more information comes, they change the article. So I guess if we are voting on this article, that's before us. Yeah. And if another article comes, we would vote on that. It's important to all be in agreement about what we are trying to do here. So if anyone can help clarify that for me, and I will appreciate the information.
Let's see. Scott, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I appreciate exactly what Mr. Ahari is saying. My colleague or associate, I don't know, what's the proper term for it? Board member?
I think I'm at this point, Scott. You can try friend, Scott. Friend also works.
Friend too. Well, that goes without saying. We're friends first. So, what I see here is, what I would like to see personally happen is, since this has been kicked around for so long, in fact, the amendment for the hearing is written by Alex Whiteside, who's a guy that basically loves, I think, just judging from the way he's so articulate on these issues of zoning. He, probably spends Saturday night and Sundays just dreaming about zoning and the different loopholes that can happen. He's incredibly articulate in it. He's got years of experience on the planning board. He's seen developers and people try to get around or interpret the law in different ways to do things that are not in the best interest of the town. There's not just a consensus of 14 neighborhood associations, there's a plurality of them. I've heard Alex at the Hillside meeting last week to a huge extent elaborate on what's written and the reasons for it, and going exactly how people can get this thing so that it becomes an utter nightmare and could just open doors to litigation that the town would be subject to forever. And like I say, nobody's got more experience than this gentleman in stating what he states. So what I would like to see is send it back and strongly encourage the planning board to collaborate with the formers, the formers of that amendment and come up with a consensus between them and then come back to us. I'm not talking about kicking it down the road. I'm talking about improving it. I think the spirit of it is good, but I do not think the way it's written is going to achieve the spirit of it for the town. And everybody I talk to in town is against the ADU as it stands right now. So part of my responsibility as a town meeting member is to represent my constituency, which is, I haven't heard one person not be against it. It was a narrow vote in the planning board, and that's just where I stand. I think, but everybody seems to be in favor of the amendment. And why should we even we don't want to vote the thing down before the other amendment comes up. So that's kind of the way I look at it.
Scott, hang up 2 seconds. Hang on. Are you talking about the citizens petition that is potentially warrant? May town meeting, ma'am, the annual town meeting?
Yes.
Okay, just for clarification, everybody. So if I'm hearing this properly, your proposal would be to remand this to the planning board, asking them to review it in light of what the citizens petition presents.
Yes, and I'd love it if they would meet with Alex.
Okay, thank you. That's perfect.
I'm done.
Okay, very much. Kathy, you have the floor.
Just briefly, I think that it should go back as well. I think this is a big issue, a big topic for a lot of people. There's a lot of passion on each side. There are a lot of people that put a lot of time into this, but I think there's a lot of people that don't feel like they've been heard yet. So I think we have to put it back and maybe open that up a little bit more and then take a vote when we know what we're actually voting for. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. You have the floor. You're muted. There you go. You've got it. Please. You're muted again.
Are you speaking to me, George?
No, Dave Humphries.
Okay.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to piggyback on Kathy's remarks a little bit, is that it's true that there's been a lot of conversation, a lot of debate. We've had this. One thing that we haven't done, though, is had this conversation in the context of the interplay potentially between the accessory dwelling unit and the temporary apartment, which is subject to the special permit, is that the conversation that we could potentially have with regard to that could look very different from the one that we're having now. And so again, I think it would be premature for us to vote on this proposed amendment to our bylaws, zoning bylaws, when one, we don't have a formal vote yet on it out of the planning board, and two, there's a significant potential different way of looking at the problem, which has been presented by way of the citizens petition, which we have yet to see. So I guess I would be in favor of sending it back, because otherwise I believe that the only alternative would be a no vote to town meeting, which could really put the whole issue, the town will could look at the whole thing sideways based upon a no vote by the warrant committee. I think a no vote or non-recommendation from the warrant committee, that I think everybody wants to see something happen, but a no vote from the warrant committee could be a stain that this bylaw could carry forward. And
that's a very good point. I thank you for that observation. Thank everybody for the observations. As usual, you bring up points that are incredibly important. Erin, you have the floor.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to follow up on some things that Scott had said earlier. I have sat in on the planning board meetings, and Denny, I don't want to step on your toes, but I can tell you that they have listened to Alex. They have gone sentence by sentence with Alex, and there are points that members of the planning board just do not agree with what Alex says. So it's not that they haven't listened to Alex. The meeting I sat in on, it was him and literally, I think her name's Kathleen, going sentence by sentence. So I just don't want anybody on this committee thinking that the planning board hasn't been doing what they're required to do. The only reason why they're taking a vote on the 8th is because of a technicality of needing to have it on the calendar for 2 weeks. So I understand and I hear what everybody's saying, but I just really want to make sure that folks understand that the planning board has been working on this. This is not the first time that they have seen it or anything else. So, and of course, here comes Scott to, say something else. Okay.
Elaborate on one point. The reason that they're having the additional February 8th meeting is not because of notice, because the changes that were introduced into this that we're seeing now is beyond.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for that. Okay. Okay. Good to know.
The time doesn't work for us, but the reason why they have to do this, and Denny, correct me if I'm wrong, you're still on, is for that reason. The town council has said that some of the changes are out of scope and have to be reheard by the public. Is that, if that's accurate, Denny, just, nod or something.
That is correct. There were two things that were definitely out of scope, and then there were just so many changes, just the sheer number of changes put it out of scope. So there was a posting issue, and
Right.
And the way to remedy it was to start over, repost it as if it's a brand new article, and allow the public to look at the new article. And they need 2 weeks for that.
Right.
Thanks so much. Thanks for clarifying that.
Thank you for, because it's an important point. Timing, we have had this issue for years that we are asked to review something, it's not finalized by one committee or other, and we find ourselves kind of in a quandary. And in this case, it's an extraordinarily important bylaw that has ramifications that are wide and broad. And in order for us to do the job that we have been asked to do, requires a lot of deliberation and a lot of attention and a lot of, as one of our members, Steve Geiser, picked up, an inconsistent bylaw, which to some people would immediately call into question some of the other issues. Scott, you have your hand up.
Yeah, Aaron, thank you very much for clarifying that. I was not aware of that, and that's great. However, I think that there's a lot of merit to what this bylaw change can produce. But as is, based on the plurality of neighborhood associations and people in the town that I've talked to, with not a single person being in favor of it as it stands, if we don't give them another chance to revisit this, I'm going to be forced to vote to not recommend this to the town meeting. That would be where my vote would be.
Okay. Denny, do you have something you want to add, please?
Yes, I did want to add a couple of things. One thing I did want to disclose that I was a founding member of the Milton Neighborhood Coalition many years ago. I'm very familiar with a lot of the neighborhoods in town. I just wanted to disclose that. I haven't been attending meetings with the Neighborhood Coalition for the last 2 years because of COVID and the pandemic, but I am familiar with Mr. Sweeney and Mr. Kernan, and I, as chair of the planning board, received the letter, I think that probably Chair Asher and Chair Conlon received. And I just wanted to check with Bob Sweeney. The letter that I'm looking at in my email, it seems to have 22 neighborhood associations listed. I don't know if Bob is there, but that's what I'm looking at in my inbox.
Denny,
Yeah,
can you hear me?
Yes.
The number of citizens that agreed to have their name beside the letter that I sent to the chairs is 26.
Yeah, so that's 26 neighborhoods across the town. So I'm sorry.
26 neighborhood associations?
No.
Yes, 26 neighborhoods.
Citizens from various neighborhoods in the town.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
But hold on a second. Do any of those names that signed, are they from the same neighborhood?
Are they from the same neighborhood?
Yes, so for example, if
okay.
I lived in
Yes.
Indian Hill, in Cliffs
Yes,
or whatever.
some of them
Okay.
are from the same neighborhood. And also, I can tell you that although there's 26 citizens on there, if I kept at it today and tomorrow, there'd be 2 or 3 times that amount because I've been getting flooded with responses. So
Really?
I'm not making the statement, I haven't made the statement that it represents the town of Milton, but I will make the statement that it represents a point of view that's pretty fairly spread around in the town.
Okay. Listen, thank
I
you.
also just wanted to point out, I'm counting on the list. Is it 12 town meeting members? 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I counted 12 town meeting members. And I just wanted to let you know right before this call, because I received this list, I looked at the analysis that I gave you of the 30 letters that I received, and I looked at the citizen article, and there was a little bit of crossover. In other words, there was a few, maybe 5 or so that were kind of scattered on different lists. But that's a lot of different people. And I just wanted to explain to Mr. O'Henny that the reason that I laid out, that I received 30 letters, I was trying to respond to Chair Asher, who asked what kind of feedback I was getting when I was before you last time. So I come before you, Mr. O'Henny, trying to provide thoughtful information in response to a request that was made of me. And I'm so sorry if I have somehow, I don't know if there was a misunderstanding there. But as an elected official, I like to report back to them what I'm hearing from them. I like to let the citizens know that I hear them. And when they write letters into me, that I read them, I absorb them, I care about the points that they make. And I just wanted to report that back. I think that's what you need to do as an elected is listen to the citizens. So I thank you. I thank you all for your service, and I thank you all for allowing me to come before you. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. And again, you're doing the heavy lifting here, so we are in your debt, and that is, regardless of how we come out, it's still a lot of work, and you're putting it in. And I think some good does come out of this. It might seem like we're giving birth to a giraffe, but are something that is going to be workable ultimately. And if it takes a couple months, that's okay. It's worth the effort. So we stand here. Let's bring this. I think we can bring this to a conclusion to some extent. With this article, we have the planning board article before us, which we technically can vote on and do one of 3 things: approve it, reject it, recommend it to the town meeting, not recommend it to the town, remand it to the planning board. Now, ancillary to that is the citizens petition, which does have some merit. For those of you who have been able to review it, it does have some merit. It incorporates some of the issues that have been reflected both to us and throughout the town, and that would be considered at the May meeting. So in fact, if we are going to remand this to the planning board, we know that citizens petition is there. And if both of them come forward, then we would have the opportunity to compare them at the May meeting. My personal opinion here is that despite the work that's gone on, I still think that there are some inconsistencies and some issues that have to be addressed and vetted to the degree that the town membership and the town residents are comfortable. I don't get the sense that the town is comfortable yet, even though it's been talked about and beaten around, et cetera, et cetera. I still think there are people who will come in for a landing and say, wait a minute, what's going on here? Let's look at this. And if we don't do it, that's going to happen at the town meeting. And I have used the term food fight, and I think that's appropriate. That would happen at the town meeting if this particular article went forward. So if we think the last town meeting was long, then I think would be ready to pitch tents. So I think that after a fashion, most concise and tightest article that can be produced would be the one that would have the best reception, not just from us, but from the town meeting as well. And honestly, I think that there's work that can still be done that can reflect a lot of the issues that we have heard, that we have raised, that others have raised, and that I think need to be considered further, not adding to the planning board's work or to ours, but just for the good of the order and being sure that we have done the very best we can for what is going to be a very important bylaw going forward. So I'll put it to the committee. Do we have a consensus that we can take? I mean, I've heard from many people. I'm interested to hear from others. If we were to take a vote, would we be sending this back to the planning board, given the backdrop of everything that we've heard and the fact that there's a citizen's petition that theoretically addresses this issue as well, that could be an alternative, could be ancillary, et cetera, et cetera? Scott.
Move that we vote to send this back to the planning board.
Okay, so we have a motion to send this back to the planning board.
Second.
And who's seconding, please?
Second, Steve.
Oh, Steve, thank you very much. I'm sorry, I can't, on this, I can't see everybody's face all the time.
Okay.
So motion has been made to remand it to the planning board and seconded. Further discussion on this point? Hearing, Erin, would you please take the roll?
Yep. Scott,
Yes, I vote to send it back.
John,
Yes, send it back, please.
Kathy,
Please send it back.
Steve,
Yes, send it back.
Lorraine,
Yes, send it back.
Dave,
Yes, send it back.
Oh, Henny,
Yes.
Kristen,
Yes.
Mohammed,
Yes.
George,
Yes.
Christine, and myself, I vote yes as well. Is there anybody I missed?
Then we have a unanimous, my goodness, we have a unanimous vote just to the planning board after all that discussion. Thank you all for your thoughtfulness. Again, I thank you, Bob Sweeney, and Carol, if you're still there, thank you very much for joining us, even though you were a surprise, a welcome surprise. And let's see, who else did we have? Tim Kernan, thank you for coming and spending time with us. I think that we have everything done that we need to have done. We will need someone to write the comment for the remanding to the planning board. And do we have a volunteer? I know this one's really popular. Is nobody going to take a stab at it?
I'll do it, Mr. Chair.
David, you are the best. I appreciate your willingness to help. And I believe we will have a meeting next Monday. We'll start with the process 2020. Agenda circulated, be in shape to get that rolling. So we have to stay tuned as to when the special town meeting will happen. There's a possibility of postponing it into March and hoping that it can still be remote. I think that would be in a number of people's interest to see that happen again. But again, it's not our call, and we just have to be responsive to what's happening. If there is I have no other new business. Does anybody have anything to bring forward?
Mr. Chair, I just have a technical question for you. If Lynn's on vacation and we're having a meeting on Monday, do we have enough time to post our agenda and our meeting?
Agenda has to be posted tomorrow. I had sent it to her before she left.
Okay, I just didn't know if it was posted on the, I just didn't know. And I just wanted to make sure that we weren't getting ready to have a meeting that
Yeah.
we couldn't have.
So we'll have to, if you and I can be in contact about that tomorrow, just to make sure where it stands. I don't know if Galvin has it yet, but we may have revise it just a little bit to reflect a conference school department will come and present.
Okay, all right, I can, I'll be around tomorrow morning, George, and I can also call Sue if needed, okay?
Great, and just update me if you get a before I find anything out. That'll be great. I'm around and available. So I think the next order of business for us, Monday's meeting will largely deal with the school committee, the school budget, and we'll all be able to come and do their presentation because that's the biggest one, the most complex one that we have to deal with. And understanding that is going to be, if we get that done, that's a big head start. So if there's no other business, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Have a second.
Second.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Aaron, please take the roll.
Yeah. Scott,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Lorraine,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Henny,
Yes.
Kristen,
Yes.
Mohammed,
Yes.
George,
Yes.
Christine,
Yes.
and myself is a yes. All right.
Thank
George, I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Thank you all very much. Stay warm and dry and have a good week.
Okay.
Bye.
Meeting, guys.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.